Let's understand what are the limitations or shortcomings of consumer surplus. Now, I've already told you that consumer surplus is based on the law of diminishing marginal utility. So, whatever the shortcomings of diminishing marginal utility were, get carried forward to the theory of consumer surplus. The first is consumer surplus cannot be measured precisely. Now, it's a known fact that consumer surplus cannot be measured precisely. We do not know how much satisfaction we derive from a good. It is difficult to calculate the satisfaction level. We already studied this in the shortcomings of law of DMU. So when you do not know the satisfaction level that you derived from a product, it will be difficult to calculate the consumer surplus, because consumer surplus is based on the satisfaction level derived from the product. It does not apply in case of necessaries. Our marginal utility does not go on diminishing in case of necessaries. Or it's not that if the price of the necessary falls, we'll consume more of it. Likewise, if the price remains constant, our consumption also remains constant because they are necessary for our survival. So, when the price is constant, the consumption of necessaries is also constant. The marginal utility derived from them also remains constant. Thus, the consumer surplus theory does not apply to the necessaries. Consumer surplus is affected by availability of substitutes. Now, if the substitutes of the product that is being considered are available in the market, the marginal utility derived from it diminishes at a higher rate, or the consumer might altogether go for the substitute. He may consume the substitute. Now, this happens because the consumer has an option here. As the utility from this product goes on diminishing, he may switch to the substitute. So, when the substitutes are available for a product, it becomes difficult to calculate the consumer surplus. Consumer surplus in case of prestige goods also becomes difficult to calculate, because the prestige goods give you higher level of satisfaction with each increase in consumption, with each increase in the commodity consumed. So when the consumer satisfaction goes on increasing, the consumer becomes ready to pay more and more for every additional product. In this case, the curve or the demand curve will be directly proportional to price, and consumer surplus cannot be calculated because it will not be downward falling. To know the consumer surplus, it is important that the demand curve is downward falling, or the marginal utility curve is downward falling, because it is based on the law of DMU, and the law of DMU states that the marginal utility from each additional consumption goes on reducing. But this does not apply to prestigious goods, superior goods. When you purchase superior goods, your satisfaction level goes on increasing, and in that case the MU curve is upward sloping. So consumer surplus in that case cannot be calculated. Marginal utility of money. Now this we've already done in the shortcomings of DMU. We had the same point there. The marginal utility of money is assumed to be constant in consumer surplus theory. However, practically, the marginal utility of money does not remain constant. The marginal utility of money goes on increasing. More number of money or more money gives you more satisfaction. So when you have to spend for consumption, as a consumer, you would not like to spend, and the satisfaction level that you will derive from each additional consumption or each additional spending goes on decreasing because the mu of money goes on increasing. Thus, the consumer surplus is actually a theoretical concept. And finally, the consumer surplus is based on the cardinal rule. Again, measuring utility is a problem. Cardinal measurement of utility is actually an academic concept, is a theoretical concept. You actually cannot measure how much utility you have derived from consumption of a commodity. So, it becomes a shortcoming for calculating consumer surplus. This brings us to the end of the topic consumer surplus. Let's take a short quiz on it.